What's going on? What's going on, Crush? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hold on.
Ah, check, check.
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I can hear you now. Something's going on with the headphones, but we all good. FantasyHolics, fantasy football folks everywhere. Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Preview Show with FantasyHolics. I am none other than Mose Knows. I got the homie OG Crush with me in the building as always. What's going on with you, brother, man? How you been?
Hey, I've been pretty good, man. Lost a few in my leagues last week, but I'm recovering. I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I mean, right now in both of my leagues, I don't know if this is good or if it's just shows how mediocre I am of a fantasy football owner. Now, granted, I've taken a few years off, so I've just gotten back into the swing of things. But in both of my leagues, I'm 4-4. I feel like in one league I should be better. I should at least be 6-2. If it
Yeah.
wasn't for Aaron Rodgers debacle in week one, and then
Uh,
another week where
man.
I had some mishaps with setting my roster, I would be 6-2. In another
Okay.
league, I feel like I should be 2-6, but I squeaked out some wins. So in both leagues, right now I'm
Yeah.
middle of the pack. I'm 4-4. I could take that, man. I'm cool with that. Got a lot to talk about tonight. We're gonna try to get a lot of information to you guys within about 45 minutes to an hour. My homie's here. John V, what's up, bro? Glad to see you in the chat, man. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before we get to the show, we got to go through the particulars. Y'all know how it go. Give us a follow on all social media outlets. It's simple. At FantasyHolics.
Mhm.
At FantasyHolics. FantasyHolics. Everywhere. That's YouTube, FantasyHolics. Facebook, FantasyHolics page. Twitter, Instagram. Follow us on all social media platforms to get tapped in with this content that we have. We're trying to give you up-to-date fantasy news as much as we possibly can. If you have questions about your lineup, if you are running into a dilemma, who to start, who to sit, this is the place that you want to be. So follow us on all social media outlets. As we do every week, let's take a look at the top fantasy performers from the previous week. We'll start with quarterbacks. We got our guy, Josh Allen,
Mm.
29 of 42. Not too many yards in the air, 249. That's a modest yardage for 2 touchdowns. Also had 8 carries, 55 yards and a touchdown. You know he's a dual threat quarterback. Josh Allen, number one quarterback this week with fantasy point total of 29.46. Josh Allen has been carrying one of my teams. The team that I said that should be 2-6,
Yep.
Josh Allen has helped carry me to a lot of wins. So I appreciate you, Josh, and we hope that you stay healthy. Now, I usually do two players in each category. This week I did one for all the other categories, but I stayed with two. And I'm excited about this one because, to be perfectly honest, I didn't think I would see this name in this list. To be number 2 in fantasy points from the quarterback position, I did not think that I would see this name on this list. Jimmy Garoppolo,
Oh.
27.28 fantasy points, 17 of 28 in the air, 322 yards, no passing touchdowns, which is a problem, Jimmy. 5 carries, though, for 4 yards. The yards
Hey.
don't matter. The 2 touchdowns do.
That's right.
2 rushing touchdowns for Jimmy Garoppolo in the red zone. Helped a struggling 49ers team. And it sucks that I have to say that out loud. A struggling 49ers team get a win over the Bears. But Jimmy Garoppolo was number 2 in fantasy points for quarterbacks this week at 27.28. Got to show some love to a FantasyHolics member, one of FantasyHolics' very own, Great White Buffalo, who was a Jets fan. I didn't think we would have a Jets name up here, but we do. The top running back in the league this week was Michael Carter. In PPR format, he scored 32.2 points. He had 15 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown, along with 9 catches for 95 yards and what was an upset win over the Cincinnati Bengals. I didn't expect this. I'm sure Great White Buffalo, I know him personally. I know he didn't expect this, but it was a pleasant surprise. I'm glad. I'm not glad because in my weekly picks, I picked the Bengals. So that's a loss on my record. But I'm happy for him that his Jets got a big win like that against a top team.
Mm-hmm.
Moving over to the wide receivers, number one this week, A.J. Brown doing his thing, 11 targets, 10 receptions, 155 yards, and 1 touchdown for a total PPR fantasy points of 31.5. He needed all of those against the Colts. Tennessee struggled. We'll talk about Tennessee because we got some news to discuss there. Moving over to tight ends, T.J. Hockenson. Now, not really a big day for many tight ends across the league, but when you got 11 targets, you catch 10 of them for 89 yards. T.J. Hockenson was in the lead per PPR format with 18.9 points this week. Here at FantasyHolics, we show love to the kickers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for some reason, the Carolina Panthers didn't take any game photos of their kicker, Zane Gonzalez. So I don't have any game time photos from the Week 8 matchup with the Atlanta Falcons. So I would love to have a slide up here for Zane Gonzalez, but unfortunately we don't. He was 4 for 4, 100% on field goals, 100% on extra points, 1 for 1 for a total fantasy points of 17 points. Shout out to Zane Gonzalez. We appreciate kickers. And speaking of this game, our top defense and special teams unit of the week is the Philadelphia Eagles. I hate saying that. I hate when I have to put Philadelphia Eagles in a sentence where I'm saying something positive about them. I'm sure that's a bad thing. I'm sure I need to go to therapy to figure out why I hate them so much. I mean, I know why I hate them so much. It's really their fan base. It's not the players. It's not the organization. It's the fan base. But it just pains me whenever I have to say anything positive about the Philadelphia Eagles. But they were the top defensive special teams unit with 21 fantasy points, 6 sacks on this struggling Lions team, 1 fumble recovered. And in this picture, you see Darius Slay with the rock taking it to the Baja for that defensive touchdown. Shout out to the Eagles, I guess. Those are your top fantasy performers for Week 8. So really, the biggest thing that I wanted to go through this week with you, Crush, is, first of all, before we get into that, give me one name right now. We're at the quasi halfway point. Most teams have played 8 games so far. So it's kind of midway, maybe not all the way midway, but kind of midway,
Right.
Since we're at an odd number of weeks. But we're coming into week 9. After week 9, give me your midseason fantasy MVP so far.
Midseason fantasy MVP. Well,
Midseason fantasy MVP.
It's going to break my heart to say this, but it would be Derrick Henry.
Okay.
All right. Derrick Henry has been on a tear this season, and he was poised for a record-breaking season, in my opinion. The way they were running the ball, how effective they were running the ball with him. But yeah, it's definitely got to be Derrick Henry in my book.
Yeah, I mean, he has a passing touchdown so far. That's on his stat sheet. He had 937 rush yards. You think to the halfway point, he was already about to eclipse 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 18 receptions for 154 yards. Total fantasy points, if you're in a PPR format, he was 3rd overall with 193.3 points so far this season. Now, I'm going to go with the name that's number 1 in this list. I didn't know he was number 1. I was going to go with this name anyway, but he is number 1 on this list. And it pains me to say it because he's a division rival. But I think the injection of the new quarterback has taken this kid's game to the next level. probably one of the most unassuming at his position, but he gets the job done. And I hate to see it. I have to go with Cooper Kupp.
Oh,
I have to go with, but I have to go. And I listen, I have to shout out you because I've never said his name this way until I heard it. And it's a dope nickname. I have to go with Bobby Tree's teammate. I love the Bobby Trees nickname. Shout out to you, Crush. I've never heard it that way before.
Bobby Trees, man.
You coined that, so but I have to go with his teammate. He's averaging 26.9 fantasy points a game, 63 receptions, 924 yards. You figure through the halfway point, he's already about to eclipse 1,000 yards and already has 10 touchdowns for 214.9 fantasy points so far.
Disgusting.
Yeah. He's just been on a tear, and it's like every week, doesn't matter who they play, the chemistry between him and Matt Stafford is absolutely unbelievable. And I don't even know if it's real chemistry yet, or if it's just based on the system and the scheme and what Sean McVay runs, and the fact that Stafford knows that, listen, this is my most reliable guy. I got to hit him. If that's what it is. But, I couldn't imagine what these two would do if they've had 3 or 4 or 5 seasons together. Like, what they're doing already is absolutely unbelievable. So, as a 49ers fan and a rival to them in this division, I would really, really hope that this slows down. Whatever they got going on, I need somebody to figure it out and slow that mojo down. But Cooper Kupp is absolutely killing it. But the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about you tonight, let's transition over to mid-season adjustments. The trade deadline passed this week. We have some trades, some that may affect fantasy, some not. Not too many trades. Let me see if I can pull some up here.
It was a boring trade deadline, I'll tell you that.
Very, very boring trade deadline. I think obviously the biggest name is Von Miller going to the Rams. You talk about the rich getting richer. And to realize what they did to acquire him. They overpaid in draft picks to make the Broncos pick up his salary. So the Broncos aren't removing that money from their books. They're keeping that $9+ million or whatever it is on their books and got extra draft compensation to do so, to let Von, that doesn't even sound like fair or like legal in football terminology. Like, they still pay the guy, but send him over somewhere else to play over there just to get drafted. Whatever. The competition committee and Roger Goodell approved it. They said, fine, if that's what you want to do. So they get another pass rusher. So now they have Aaron Donald on level 1, Von Miller on level 2, Jalen Ramsey on level 3. The other guys are just there.
Yeah, they're just chilling.
But I think with that team, you're okay with being a role player, knowing who those 3 core pieces are. Steelers trade Melvin Ingram to the Chiefs. I think this may be a solid trade for the Chiefs.
Definitely.
Their defense has been struggling. I don't know if he moves the needle that much, especially for their secondary and the struggles that they've had back there. But we know football. We know that pass rush helps the secondary. Secondary helps pass rush. It's reciprocal. So maybe he can come in and provide a spark alongside Chris Jones and Frank Clark that they need. The Chiefs also trade Laurent Duvernay-Tardif to the Jets. Jets look like they're out of it, but they get much-needed help on that offensive line. Prior to the trade deadline, Patriots sent Stephon Gilmore to the Panthers. That looked like a good trade, but Panthers offense has been sputtering the past few weeks. Eagles trades. This is also before the trade deadline. Eagles trade Zach Ertz to the Cardinals. Zach found a new home and he's fitting in quite well over there. I think my 49ers, we got Charles Omenihu from the Texans. A couple other moves happened, but nothing major. Mark Ingram goes back to the Saints. But what I want to talk about more than the trade deadline, because as you said, it was a very boring trade deadline. What do we do for players now, mid-season? Most of the waiver wire diamonds in the rough have already been snatched up. What do we do in situations where Derrick Henry gets hurt and now he's on IR? You know, at first it was season ending. Now they're saying it could be 6 to 10 weeks. But by the time he comes back, if he does come back, it'll only be for a playoff run. Right. In situations where the Saints, who looked like they were just starting to catch their groove, defense is playing on fire, offense is doing just enough, lose Jameis Winston to a torn ACL, he's done for the season. What are fantasy owners' options mid-season if a key player like that goes down with a major injury? Like, what have you seen in your history if you've had any type of scenarios like that, and how did you handle those?
Well, that's a good question. And these past few seasons, I've been a Christian McCaffrey owner. As disappointing as that is, and as disappointing as his injury history has been. So what had happened was the first time when he got hurt, Mike Davis was on the roster. So I was able to pick him up on the waiver wire because my team was doing bad at that point. But I've seen people go on the waiver wire. If there's like slim pickings or stuff like that, it's like throwing darts. You know what I mean? You kind of got to pick and choose. Okay, does this player have a good matchup? How has his past few games been? What's his future few games look like? So just trying to work the waiver wire, maybe even facilitate some trades. Say if you're stronger at the wide receiver position and this running back got hurt, maybe throw out a wide receiver, try to get a running back in return.
Yeah, man, I'm trying to wrap my head around this because I think, let me go into my leagues and check something real quick. Let me see, how many teams is this? Okay, both my leagues are 12-team leagues, right? So in one league, this is what and both leagues are PPR. In one league, this is what my wide receivers look like. And of course, it doesn't want to open up right away. But I can tell you off the top of my head.
Don't say
in
Calvin
this
Ridley.
League, I have Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Deebo Samuel. On my bench, I have Tyler Lockett, DJ Moore, and Chase Claypool.
Ooh.
Those are my wide receivers in that league.
Wow.
This other league must value that position way more because my wide receivers in this league are Odell Beckham Jr., which we'll talk about in a second, Marquez Callaway, Darnell Mooney. I had to pick up Alan Lazard. I have Nelson Aguilar, Corey Davis, and Sterling Shepard.
Oh,
it's a night and day difference between wide receivers in those leagues. So in one league, I have some room to make some trades if I needed to. In this other league, I don't really. And we'll talk about Corey Davis because he has a matchup tonight, but he's out. What's going on with OBJ in Cleveland?
Man.
I mean, he might be disgruntled, but from the OBJ that we used to know, he hasn't really been acting out on those frustrations.
Right.
Yes, his dad may have tweeted out or put something on Instagram that was long and outdrawn, but he himself didn't do anything to show frustration. This week, Wednesday, he showed up ready to practice, and he was excused. Today, he showed back up. Now, after you excuse me once, I'm going to take that as a sign of disrespect.
Right.
You can't excuse me once and then expect me to come back. But he's a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you know what? I got excused once. That's all good. I'll come back the next day. Maybe cooler heads prevail. And I'm going to practice with my guys. And they excused him again. But he's in my starting lineup. So if he got excused from practice on Wednesday and excused from practice on Thursday, he's probably going to be excused tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I have to take him out. But who do I take him out for?
Mm-hmm.
Sterling Shepard is doubtful. Corey Davis is game tonight, and he's out. Like, Crush, I'm in a dilemma, bro. What do I do?
Is Peoples-Jones still hurt?
I don't know. I have to look that up.
Peoples-Jones looks like the main guy if Beckham can't go. There's also Landry, but once again, throwing darts, man. It's really tough. That's really tough. I'd say Donovan Peoples-Jones is your next best option as far as Browns wide receivers go.
What are there any other backup gems? Like I got Alan Lazard, and I mean I got Alan Lazard because he is the number 2 option in Green Bay, and I would feel better about Alan Lazard had not Aaron Rodgers contracted COVID. And I have Aaron Rodgers in my other league. So I'm glad that I just mentioned that because I have to go in my other league and find a quarterback to replace him for this week. I would have felt better about Alan Lazard coming back if Aaron is playing. We have to see what Jordan Love is able to do. But there's so many. There's Aaron Rodgers catching COVID. There's the OBJ situation. There's Derrick Henry that we talked about. There's Jameis Winston that we talk about. I'm sure some fantasy owners were holding out hope that Michael Thomas was going to come back for a late season run, and now he had a setback. He's out for the season. I will give a little bit of good news, okay? So in the other league where I have all those receivers, my tight end is Jonnu Smith. Now, in that draft, I took Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. But throughout that process of the season, I had to cut Hunter Henry, and I kept Jonnu Smith. That turns out to be a bad idea because now Hunter Henry is building chemistry with Mac Jones, and Jonnu Smith isn't. But I was going through, the waiver wire, and somebody got a little too impatient with a tight end I'm very familiar with.
Is he coming off IR?
Somebody got a little too impatient with George Kittle. They must not have understood the short-term IR rules.
That's so funny.
Because Kittle came off IR this week. He was at practice Wednesday and Thursday, and he looks pretty good. Looks like he's going to play. So I did find a gem there, but we're not always going to find gems like that. We're not always going to find an owner who is too quick on the draw or overly impatient and gets rid of a top-flight player like a George Kittle. So other than finding the backup on that team, what other strategies do you have for scouring the waiver wire? I know you mentioned taking a look at, past games and their production, looking at, upcoming matchups and seeing what defenses they'll be playing against, who are the corners, things of that nature. If we're just talking about receiver, but are you on that waiver wire every day? Are you looking to see, if new guys pop up there? Like, how often are you in the waiver wire? What guys are you looking for? Are there any names that maybe you've picked up over the past couple of weeks that you think, could be beneficial for other people to look at?
Yeah, so I like to look at the waiver wire at least once a day, just to check things out. I get news on my Twitter feed all the time. I get all the updates. So anything that's going in the NFL, it's going through my phone. I try to keep up to date on all that stuff, injuries, situations, what have you. But no, honestly, and I wanted to tell you this before, but another name you could possibly look at is Tajay Sharp of the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
So with Ridley out, it's going to be the Zacchaeus and Gage show on the outside. But last week, Sharp looked pretty good with Matt Ryan there. So I think that might be one of those little diamond in the rough kind of plays, But those are just one of the players I picked up personally. And I also picked up what was his name? He was Henry's backup, but I can't think of his name right now.
Derrick Henry's backup, Jeremy McNichols.
That's it. That's who I picked up because I'm in PPR leagues and he's going to be getting the catches. Obviously Adrian Peterson's going to get the first down, second down looks and stuff like that. But third down's kind of a bit of a faster guy. I'll go with him.
I was smiling real big because as I'm scrolling through the waiver wire, there's a name that I see here. And folks, this is why you tune in to FantasyHolics. Donovan Peoples-Jones is available. Now his status is questionable.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I have a choice. Now, so we're gonna do this real time, folks. We're gonna do this real time. So I might pick up Donovan Peoples-Jones anyway, but I might look to pick up another wide receiver because I'm just not a fan of who I have. Now, KJ Osborne is here, and he's had some pretty decent games. Week 1, 14 points. Week 2, 20 points. Then he went back down to his normal 4 points, 6 points, 4 points. Week 6 versus Carolina, 19 points by. And then week 8, he had 3 points. So you never know with KJ Osborne when he's going to get featured in the offense. It seems like maybe against better teams, Cincinnati, better defense, Arizona, better defense, Carolina with all those corners, better defense, he has a better game because those defenses focus more on Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Mm-hmm. Dallas, he didn't have that big of a game. They're at Baltimore, so I don't know. KJ Osborne is a name here. So I got Sammy Watkins, KJ Osborne, James Washington from the Steelers, Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor are here. Randall Cobb from the Packers. Do you like any of those names better than Peoples-Jones, or you would go with Peoples-Jones based on the removal of OBJ from the lineup?
I mean, Watkins wouldn't be a bad pickup in my opinion.
Okay.
Going up against that, I believe it's Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota has a pretty soft defense. So I don't mind Watkins getting a few balls here and there. Especially with them focused on Marquise Brown, and they always got to watch out for Mark Andrews across the middle.
Right.
That might open things up for one Sammy Watkins.
All right, so how about I do this? I think I'm going to pick up, when we get off the air, I think I'm going to pick up Sammy Watkins, and I'm going to pick up, matter of fact, I'm not going to do it off the air. I'm going to do it right now because somebody from this league is probably listening, and they're probably going to do me dirty. Try to pick these dudes up while I'm talking.
Savage.
So, who do I want to drop?
Oh, boy.
This is always the tough part, too. I think I'm going to drop Sony Michel. Because Sony Michel hasn't been doing anything for me this year. Yeah, I'm going to drop Sony, pick up Sammy. And then I picked up an extra defense because Tampa was on a bye.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, that's why I picked up, because Tampa's on a bye this week. So I picked up Dallas versus Denver.
Oh.
Was that a good or a bad ugh?
I'm a Denver fan, buddy. That's a bad.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh, no disrespect.
Oh man. Oh,
no,
I'm hurt.
No disrespect, sir. But I mean, let's look. Listen, we're doing this live on the air because these are the type of decisions towards the end of the season that can make or break you. Mm-hmm. Now, I could go Baltimore versus Minnesota, but I feel like Minnesota has the opportunity to put up points.
I like Dallas with Dak back.
Yeah, I mean, with Dak back, their ability to move the ball. Denver has struggled as of late on offense to move the ball. Now they get rid of Von Miller. We don't know how that is going to reverberate through the team. I mean,
Listen, they barely won against Washington.
yeah.
They almost fumbled that game away twice.
I mean, I could go Chargers versus the Eagles. Chargers defense versus the Eagles, but I mean,
I still like Dallas here over them.
and then Raiders versus the Giants.
Raiders haven't been bad this year. They are what, 5-2?
But again, another issue. I'm sure that Henry Ruggs owners are scrambling to figure out what to do now. Unfortunate situation with him. Obviously, with FantasyHolics, we understand people make mistakes. We're not passing any judgment. It's unfortunate for the player. It's unfortunate for the organization. But more importantly, it is unfortunate for the family who lost a loved one. So from FantasyHolics to that family, the family and friends of the deceased, we send our condolences. It's a terrible situation, terrible tragedy. Nobody wants to get that type of news. So it's unfortunate, but we are talking fantasy football, and owners are probably trying to scramble and figure out what to do. That's why I think this is a huge conversation about mid-season adjustments, because you never know what's going to go on. You never know who's going to get hurt.
Right.
So many different things can happen. So I think I'm going to stick with your advice. Unfortunately, it is against your Denver Broncos, but I'm going to have to go with the Cowboys, because I think Trayvon Diggs is upset that he didn't get a pick last week.
So now he's going to get 2 this week.
So and you know he has to show up his old teammate on the other side, Pat Surtain.
Yep.
He got to show him, like, I was the better corner at Bama. I don't care how high you were drafted. I was the better corner at Bama. So let's get to some of these comments. We have a comment here from Tony Baker, and I want to get to this comment before the game starts. He says, "You guys feel good about starting Michael Carter tonight against a tough Colts run D? Standard scoring." Go ahead, Crush. What you got to this question?
Standard scoring, that's tough. I mean, it would depend on what your other options are, but I know I'm starting Michael Carter tonight, but I'm also in a PPR league. So, but it looks like, him and White have got some good rapport going on. They're moving the ball a little better. You got Jamison Crowder coming across the middle as a security blanket. I don't mind Michael Carter tonight in standard or PPR.
Yeah, I think while the Colts do have a solid run defense, I think they are susceptible, especially in a sloppy game in the rain in San Francisco. Elijah Mitchell put up over 100 yards against that defense. Mm-hmm. So it is possible to move the ball on this team. And we do know that the Colts have some weapons. If Carson Wentz plays intelligently, because I have no idea what that throw out of the end zone was against the Titans. No idea. And I think that's the biggest complaint that fantasy owners and football fans alike have about Carson Wentz is he's so talented. He's such an athlete. He can do so many special things that a lot of other quarterbacks can't do. But sometimes it's those small lapses of judgment in the battle, like in the midst of a game, in a play, where it's like, Carson, what are you thinking? Why would you ever do that?
So tough.
So if he can clean those up, this team will probably be doing a little bit better. But I think you can move the ball on this defense, and the more you can keep the ball out of Carson Wentz's hands and out of Jonathan Taylor's hands, more importantly, if you can run the ball and control the clock, I think you need to do that. And if I'm the Jets, that's what I'm doing. So, I wouldn't have a problem starting Michael Carter tonight. Let's actually move over to that. to our stardom sit-em segment. And I need a quarterback that you're going to start this week in week 9. And I need a quarterback that you want to sit this week.
All right. Well, I'm going to start here with Kirk Cousins going against the Ravens. So the Ravens have allowed a top 10 quarterback in 3 of the last 4 games.
Ooh.
All right. So they do have holes in this defense. And Kirk Cousins has been pretty good this whole entire season. He's been a solid quarterback too for me. I know that much. So I'm definitely going to be starting him against that Ravens defense. Now for my sit.
Who's taking a seat this week?
Matt Ryan versus the Saints.
Woo!
So I'm bringing us a little information here. The last 2 games that he played against the Saints, this was last year, they held him under 275 passing yards in those games. And in those games, he's thrown 1 touchdown to 2 picks.
Yikes.
So once again, without Ridley, yeah, he'll still get Pitts the ball and all that stuff. And Patterson might have a good game as well. But as far as expecting big numbers from Matt Ryan, no thanks.
Got you. Comments real quick. My homie Niner Gang Podcast. What's going on, Dion? What's good, Mose? You got to say what's up to Crush, too. You can't say what's up to me without saying what's up to the homie Crush. You got to say what's up to both of us, Dion. Come on, man. Come on, man. He knows better than that. Comment from John Wright Jr. Thank you so much for tuning in, John. He says, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, and I would assume that's Jonathan Taylor. Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor. Are those you have all 3 of those running backs? Goodness gracious, man. Start 2, standard. What 2 you starting in this list? Aaron Jones versus the Kansas City Chiefs. You know that defense is trash. Austin Eckler versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I guess I can't say they're trash because of what they did to Detroit. But again, that's Detroit.
That's Detroit.
And then Jonathan Taylor going up against the Jets tonight. What 2 you got?
It's tough. Taylor for sure going against the Jets. Taylor's been on a rip this whole season. And I'm going to go with Aaron Jones with Jordan Love under center. I think he's going to rely heavily on Aaron Jones. So those are the 2 I'm going. It's close though.
Yes, I think we agree on Aaron Jones because of Jordan Love starting, and also because of the weaknesses of the Chiefs defense. I think you have to rely heavy on Aaron Jones. Right. Even in a standard league, you have to rely heavy on Aaron Jones. They're going to want to go through him and try to take as much off of Jordan Love's plate as they can. Where I disagree is I'm going Eckler over Taylor. And the only reason is I struggle personally unless it's like Josh Allen or Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, unless it's like a top flight guy who you cannot sit. And I guess Jonathan Taylor is getting there. I struggle with starting guys on Thursday night because those Thursday night games, coming off a short week, you didn't get much practice time. But you usually don't see guys really, really go off. Sometimes they do, but for the most time they don't. But I like Austin Eckler versus Philly, even in a standard league, but especially in a PPR league. I like Austin Eckler versus Philly because of what he'll be able to do in the pass game. So even if it's not PPR, if he can get you 50 plus receiving yards plus whatever he does on the ground, you still get that benefit, right? You don't get the extra point for the reception, but you still get the yards. If he has a receiving touchdown, all that stuff is good. So versus a Philly team who probably might be a little bit too high on themselves after what they did to the Lions, and a Chargers team that want to bounce back from a loss against the Patriots, I think I would take Eckler here. Here goes Dion again. Chiefs defense is hot garbage, he said. Matt Oliveri, thank you so much, Matt, for watching. He says, who do I play tonight? Ertz, Fryermuth, or CJ Uzama? Now, I'll tell you this right off the bat. I'm a 49ers fan, so I cannot in good faith tell you to play Zach Ertz. I can't do that, especially going up against one of the best linebackers in the league in Fred Warner. And we've already played the Eagles, so we've got tape on Zach Ertz, so we know what's going to happen. And we don't know yet if Kyler's going to play. Kyler might play, but he might not. And if it's Colt McCoy, you definitely can't start Zach Ertz. So for me, it would be between Fryermuth and Uzama. I mean, Bears got good linebackers, but we don't know if Eddie Jackson is going to play. And then Cleveland's defense is okay, but I don't know how they are against tight ends. I might go with CJ Uzama here. What are you thinking?
I 100% agree with you. I'm not going with Ertz. Fryermuth. He has a really tough matchup, and I know everyone was really excited about adding him to the waiver wire this week, and really excited to start him. But he has a really tough matchup, and I really think that Uzama is going to go off against Cleveland Browns. To be honest with you, I think he's set up for a good game.
Absolutely. Another comment from John Wright Jr. He says, coming into week 9, who is your biggest bust of the year? I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago and our disappointments, but halfway through the season, who so far is your biggest disappointment? John Wright says Allen Robinson. So you give me one name and I'll give you a name.
CMC, man. I drafted him again this year. I fell into the same old trap. And he's been hurt most of the season. It's been really tough.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2.
Okay.
One's a name, one's a team. I have to go with George Kittle up until this point. Partly because of the quarterback play. Us 49er fans, we know that all too well. But then also injury concerns. He's been out, the last 3 games. Mm-hmm. So he hasn't lived up to his top tight end billing. So I have to go Kittle. But then I'm going to also go with a defensive unit. And I talked about this before because I was really excited about this defense going into this season. The Washington football team defense has been by far the biggest disappointment for me, just because I was expecting them to fly all over the field. I expected them to get sacks galore. I expected them to be able to stop the run like that. Their defensive front with Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen and Montez Sweat and Chase Young, and then they added the linebacker in the draft, and they added William Jackson to the corner, and they still got Landon Collins, and Cameron Curl isn't going into his second year, and Kendall Fuller. Like, I thought this defense was going to be top 5, no questions asked, shutting teams out, like really, really doing some monstrous stuff on defense. And they look bad. Like, they look really, really bad. So that would be my bust for so far this year. If I'm going to give you a start-sit candidate, quarterback, who am I going to start? Let me take a look here. Ooh. Ugh. Ugh. Yikes. I don't know who I want to start. Who? I would start I guess start Mac Jones versus Carolina.
Okay.
Because I think the more and more we go through this season, New England is finding a groove. And I think they're finding a new way to win games. It's not the old way. Right. It's not the old way. It's not the old Patriots stifling defense way. It's not the Tom Brady throwing you into a game and taking advantage of mismatches. It's not that way anymore. It's a new way. And I think they're starting to figure that out and find that way. And I think Mac Jones is coming into his own. And I think Bill Belichick is going to find a way to exploit that defense. You know, they have playmakers. They have Stephon Gilmore now, but I think he'll find a way to exploit them. I was really high on Cleveland at the beginning of the season. They've had some injuries. Now there's some turmoil with OBJ. Don't really know what's going on with the Browns. I'm sitting Baker Mayfield this week because I don't know what's happening, and he hasn't been looking good. And I think part of OBJ's frustration, if there is any, is because of the lack of positive play from the quarterback. All right, let's go to running backs. Who you starting? Who you sitting? Week 9.
All right, you'll like this one. I'm starting Eli Mitchell this week. There we go. That's right. Get your dance on, buddy. Get your dance on.
Oh, yeah.
So listen, this guy has had 100-yard games and a touchdown each of the past 2 games. All right, he does have a rib injury. That's something to monitor. But it is a semi-tough matchup for him. The Cards give up the 7th fewest points to running backs. But it's the Eli Mitchell show in that backfield right now. You know, he's taking over. He's looking really good too. So I'm going to start him for sure. Now, for my sit, I'm going to be sitting Zach Moss.
Ooh.
All right. So he's had 37 yards or fewer rushed in the last 3 games. Yes, he's getting a lot of targets. I don't really expect that to continue, to be honest with you. I just don't trust Zach Moss. I don't trust either of those running backs in the backfield for Buffalo, just because it's been so sporadic this season. The on and off, I don't want to take that chance this week with Zach Moss.
If I'm starting a running back this week, I'm starting Myles Gaskin versus the Texans.
Good start.
I mean, if Uncle Prime, aka Deion Sanders, was here, he would say about this game that ain't nobody care. Okay, this is 1-7 versus 1-7.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Miami is thirsty for a win. If there's a defense where Myles Gaskin can, take off and help move this ball and help control the clock, where Miami can go and get the dub and just get out of there easy. You got to run the ball, control the clock. I think that's a solid game for him to do some damage. We know Houston's defense is abysmal. And I'm sitting James Robinson this week versus Buffalo. He absolutely disappointed me against Seattle, who's the 31st ranked defense in the league. For him to only give me 4 fantasy points last week, that was absolutely atrocious.
It should have been a slam dunk.
It should have been, and it wasn't, and I'm frustrated by that. So this may be an emotional decision, but James Robinson is headed to the bench. Got another question before we go into wide receivers. Does Bryan Edwards of the Raiders break out this week? I'd say no. And I say no for the simple fact that now that Henry Ruggs is going, based off of what we've seen so far, and depending on the status of Darren Waller, Bryan Edwards feels like, to me, he's the number 1 option. Zay Jones is number 2. So what do defenses like to do? They like to take away your number 1 option and force you to beat them somewhere else. Now, depending on the health of Darren Waller, if he comes back, then obviously the attention and focus goes to him. But I think defenses will start paying a lot more attention to Bryan Edwards. They are playing the New York Giants. So that means he'll probably be lined up either against Adoree Jackson or James Bradbury. So either way, it's going to be a dogfight. So I wouldn't say he breaks out this week. What do you think?
Well, I think Bradbury and Jackson are very good at defending the outside for that Giants defense. where you can attack him is those shorter routes from the slot. So I think that if anybody gets a boost here this week, it's going to be Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller if he's available as well. Brian Edwards, I'm not looking for a big game for him. So
Another question. Any news on Kyler? Would you start him this week over Taysom Hill? No new news that I know of on Kyler. I know that they're taking it easy. I believe he's not going to participate in practice, but that does not mean that he won't be available for game day. So he's going to show up on the injury report as do not participate, and likely he's going to be a game time decision. So if you're uncertain, if you can't wait that long, I would try to find another option. I know Taysom Hill is also coming back off of an injury. So I don't even know if Taysom Hill gets to start over Trevor Siemian with as well as he played last week. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously Kyler isn't going to practice this week. They obviously want to take it easy with him for the long haul. If he does play, I will start him over Taysom Hill for 100%. Taysom Hill, like you said, is also coming off an injury, and they like to use him in a lot of different ways in that offense. So, do I think he gets the start? I don't know. He might even not get the start, just because of how they use him. They run him, they throw passes to him. He's utilized a lot of different ways, so he's going to get hit a lot of different ways. So,
yeah, where I think the benefit for Kyler is he doesn't have to run, and he doesn't get run as much as a Taysom Hill does.
Right.
And he can beat you from the pocket. So, yeah, I keep an eye out for that. As it is going to be a game time decision. But if he does start, just make sure you're watching that and get him in there before 1 o'clock hits. Or no, I mean, the Niners-Cardinals game isn't until 4:25 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the Saints game starts at 1. So you're going to have to make your decision pretty early. Because if you don't go with Taysom Hill, then you're kind of stuck until you find out what's going on with Tyler. So I would have another backup plan just in case. All right, Crush, wide receivers. Give me one start, give me one sit.
All right, so I'm going to start Brandon Cooks at Miami. Spicy. So with Tyrod's back, he's ready to reconnect with the wide receiver. Miami also allows the second most points to wide receiver.
Oh,
so
even with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones?
Yeah, it's kind of rough there in Miami right now, but I'm starting Brandon Cooks 100%.
I mean, that's not fantasy related, but Miami sitting at 1-7. That is another disappointing team because they were one game away from making the playoffs.
That's huge.
Yikes. All right, who you sitting?
I'm sitting Mike Williams against the Eagles.
Ooh.
All right.
So I think you foresee a battle with Darius Slay that day, huh?
I do. He's been on a slump the past last 3 or 4 games right there. He started off hot, just kind of fizzled out there. But I think if the Chargers want to win this game, they're going to focus on, getting the ball to Keenan Allen, getting the ball to Austin Eckler. Focus on those playmakers. So I don't like Mike Williams this week.
Who am I going to start? I mean, I have to start him because I don't have any other choice. But I don't know. Do I start? Ooh. Give me Jerry Jeudy versus Dallas.
Ooh.
He came back last week, got his feet wet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm sure there's going to be some gamesmanship with him and Trayvon Diggs. I'm sure there's going to be some gamesmanship.
Yeah.
If they line up across each other, I'm sure there's going to be some gamesmanship. Now, will Teddy be able to give him the ball? I don't know, but I think he got his legs back under him last week. I think if Denver wants to stay in this game, they're going to have to go to Jerry Jeudy.
Got to.
They're going to have to feature him a little bit more in this offense. So I'm going out on a limb, and I'm going to say give me Jerry Jeudy versus Dallas, especially in a PPR league. And if I'm going to sit a wide receiver, yeah, I mean, anybody on Jacksonville, Laviska Shenault, Marvin Jones, that Buffalo defense is crazy.
Yeah,
And
it is.
with the way Jacksonville played in Seattle against that defense, I don't expect them to do any better against Buffalo. So if you got a Jacksonville receiver, just put them back on the bench until the following week. Give me a tight end that you want to start and sit, and we're going to get on out of here.
Okay. I'm going to start CJ against the Browns.
Yep, we talked about that. I agree with that one.
We talked about that earlier, and I think he's going to have a pretty good game there. So definitely starting him. Sitting Dan Arnold versus the Bills. It goes along with the Jaguars point right there. Yep. Any Jaguars player, just sit him against the Bills.
I agree with this start, and I'm probably going to sit Dallas Goedert versus the Chargers just because I don't think he's going to have a big game against Derwin James. We know Derwin James locks up tight ends.
Yes.
And I think they'll try to take that away and make the Eagles beat them somewhere else. That's going to do it for our show this week. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned in tonight. We greatly appreciate you. Again, follow us on all social media at FantasyHolics. This is where you're getting great content. You can ask myself, you can ask Crush, you can ask any of the FantasyHolic members on our Facebook page. You can put a question out to the community, and we get tons of interactions. So you'll get 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 comments of people giving you their insight and their ideas to your questions. So if you have any questions about fantasy football, connect with us on all of our social media handles. That is how you will get this content. That is how you will get the information that you need to make the best decision for your fantasy football team to hopefully get you in position to win the championship. Crush, this was great. Took a couple of weeks off. Got a lot of stuff going on at home, new baby, at work. It's been crazy. But we're going to try to be more consistent. Absolutely. Appreciate you jumping on as always. And I'll see you next week, man.
Take it easy, man.
Later.